Hello and welcome to This Day. I'm BJ Arnett, your host. We've been having this wonderful conversation with the author of the book, A Right-Worthy Woman, and she is Ruth P. Watson. Ruth, thank you so much for continuing to have this conversation. We are talking about a woman named Maggie Lena Walker, that real woman, all of this really happened, that she really captivated her industry. At a time when, first of all, women barely are able to hold on to their positioning now, and we're in 2023. But this woman happened to be born at a time that, as a woman, she shouldn't have even had the opportunity. Most women didn't. What years are we talking about that she came onto the scene to do what she's done?
Well, you know, she had been working for a very long time. She started at 12 years old, around 1876.
Around 1876. So this is just after the Civil War.
Right after the Civil War ended in 1865. Well,
and all the residual, right? Hypothetically, that it ended in 1865. But then she's around 12 when you get a hold to her story.
Right. Actually, yes, when I got a hold to her story. But at 12 years old, she was always very, very inquisitive. Her father passes away, and her mother has to step up and take care of the family. And you know how difficult that was in 1876. And it's around about the time when we got this guy, Jim Crow, running around, acting like a pretty clown, which he was.
Yes.
He was a, he was a performer. And he performed, telling people that black people weren't good enough.
Wow.
And we were already freed in 1865. So, of course, people started backing back and started taking things back. And Maggie Lena Walker was always so inquisitive, and she wanted to know, how do these people live like this? How do they do these things? And her mother would get a little fretted with her because she was a little, talkative and ask questions that colored children don't ask.
Wow, wow.
And she started attending the Fraternal Order of St. Luke. And she started seeing how they were helping other African Americans who couldn't bury their family members, who had problems in the community, and they couldn't take care of their homes. And she decided that she would be a part of that.
Of that help organization.
Of that help. So her community was like already instilled in her that we're no longer going to be in the situation that we're in. We're going to do some things, and I'm going to make sure that we do some things to change our current situation. So she became a teacher. And when she became an educator, she started teaching her students about money. That was economics was always on her mind. If we save if we have 5 cents, then what can we purchase at the store? If we had this, and if you saved the money that you had, what could you do with that money? How can you make the money grow? I mean, she was way ahead of her time.
I was about to say, people didn't talk about that. Like that. And especially a woman wasn't necessarily given the opportunity to have information as the seed to make these thoughts happen. Was her family educated? And
no.
No.
But I can tell you, there's always a root to some stories. And there's a root to, there's some residual effects to being around the right people in your life. Now, her mother was a slave, but her slave owner was also a Union spy. So that was a bold woman right there.
Yes.
She was a Union spy that people thought was crazy. So her mother used to tell her stories about this lady. But then she saw her mother, when her dad died, take the ham and just started to take care of the business. She had her son, it was almost like a factory. She knew what to do. The mother said, okay, we're gonna survive. We're gonna do whatever we need to do to make money for our family.
And where was Maggie Lena Walker living? Did you say Richmond, Virginia?
Richmond, Virginia.
And how did she affect the community in terms of, she's a thinker, she's a financial thinker, but what businesses and development did she do in the community that made her so noteworthy?
Well, for one thing, she started a youth league. I mean, she did things for the youth, teaching them about money. She turned around and said that women shouldn't be domesticated. She said women should be able to bring something to the table along with their husbands. She met her husband, who was well established. He was a contractor. He was building things. He was very confident in his abilities. So when you have support from someone as confident as you are, then you can do something.
You can do some things. Maggie was a woman of color. However, she has a white parent and a black parent. Am I correct?
She does.
So she's born right at that Civil War period. Who was her father and who was her mother?
Well, her mother was an ex-slave, Elizabeth. And her father, the Colberts. People still talk about them in Richmond, Virginia, because there's still some of them still around. He was a Confederate soldier.
Get out.
A Confederate soldier, not a Union soldier.
Right.
A Confederate soldier. And he was invited into the spy's home, who is Elizabeth Van Lew, her home, and he met her mother.
Because she was in service.
She was in service in the home. Wow. She had a baby by him, which I don't know how it happened. They say it was a love story. I'm not sure about that.
And some of her family is still living in Richmond. So
yes.
You were able to identify and get conversations with family members as well to develop all of this.
What I did was I researched everything I could about her. I had to figure out who was her competition. Her competition was on both sides of the road. Her African American, her colored family, and white, because they didn't know where she belonged. But he was her biological father. But her real father was a man who took care of her, and he was the one who was killed accidentally, and that's when her mother had to take control of things in the household. But she endured quite a bit of abuse because people said, well, she's getting away with these things because she is light complexioned. Wow. And she's able to talk to these people because do you think in 1870s, well, let's say 1898, do you really think that any white person in any state, in the Confederacy, and Richmond is the home of the Confederacy. Right. It's the monument of Confederacy. Do you really think they cared that she was a mixed child? No, they did not. No. They treated her probably even worse. That would be my thought. They did. But she was something different than anybody I've ever read about or heard about. This lady could let stuff just roll off her back. And you found in your research that she was able to walk into places and areas of influence that no other black person was really able to do. Because she could handle the abuse. See, I think you add and you give credit This is my opinion. The 2 words. And although she was called the N-word, she knew she wasn't the N-word.
So she kept walking.
She kept walking. So, I mean, when she was learning how to be a banker, she'd walk behind a banker just to gain knowledge. That was because it wouldn't look right for her to walk beside him. She was beneath him.
Right, so she had to walk behind him.
She had to walk behind him, but she understood that she needed to do that to get to the goal that she had in her mind, which was to have her own bank.
Ooh, that'll preach. Sometimes we want so much to be put into right position because we're worthy, that we forget worth has very little to do with the steps that you take, but the character that you develop within yourself.
Yes.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
And she prayed a lot. You got to understand that this was a praying woman. So not only did she pray, she believed in her prayers. And I think that took it to a whole different
level. Yeah.
Because she was no longer walking in the natural. She was walking and doing business in the supernatural.
Ooh, come on, somebody. I'd say that, you know, and I often say, and my husband and I say this to you, I'm glad I was born now. I don't know if I would have lived very long then, because I just can't, it's so hard for me to wrap my mind around what my grandparents, my great-grandparents walked through. That's just, and that's what she walked through. But to have the understanding that if you just keep your mouth closed and keep the information coming, that she could do what she did to open the first bank of a woman, and then an African-American woman, is more than outstanding in all of the people that she influenced. What do you want people to walk away with?
I want people to, anybody, everybody of all colors, to walk away with the knowledge that whatever you put in your head and you believe that you can do, you can do. But use Maggie Lena Walker as an example of a woman who was being ridiculed from every which way she could turn. But she had that kind of stamina, that kind of perseverance, that kind of total commitment that no matter what you did to her or said to her or about her, she took care of her community. And her community was Jackson Ward. She wanted African Americans to have businesses, to put their money into their own banks, to have positions and titles, and she trained people to do just that. She was the first woman also in the country, Black woman, to open up a department store with the exact same items as some of the high-end stores in Richmond, Virginia.
An amazing story and an amazing woman. Maggie Lena Walker. There's so much about her that, you know, I feel like we just did a teaser and I just want to take the book home and read it because she went a bank, a department store, and the influence in all of the country and all of the nation, all of the world. Thank you, Ruth P. Watson, for bringing this, and Simon & Schuster's editor for saying, can you just write that story?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Maggie Lena Walker, if you haven't heard the story, you've got to get the book, A Right Worthy Woman. I thank you for joining us. God bless.